Originally Isabella Baumfree, Soldier of Truth was one of the bravest antebellum reformers who helped shape American society into the way it is today. She was born in 1797 into slavery in Ulster County, New York. She fought for gender and racial equality.
She is known for her most famous speech, Ain't I a Woman, which is an empowering message in which she uses biblical allusions to justify that men are afraid of women because they are as powerful and independent, if not more, than.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions?
Of course.
All right. My first question is, what exactly did you fight for?
Well, I was an abolitionist, and I met with many people, such as William Lord Garrison and Frederick Douglass, who inspired me to write my speeches. However, many of the men, including Frederick Douglass, that I spoke with had sexist viewpoints that made it difficult to equally fight for abolishing slavery. That is one of the reasons why I began to fight for women's rights.
So you fought for women's rights after?
Correct.
Okay. So how exactly did you fight? Were there any, violent protests or riots?
Absolutely not. I never used any violence in my protests, and I kept my speeches powerful yet peaceful. I referred to the Lord and the Bible as I was inspired by the Second Great Awakening. However, I never learned to read or write.
That's crazy. What were some difficulties that you faced when you were fighting for your rights?
Well, aside from being a woman in a patriarchal society, I was also born directly into slavery right down the Hudson in Ulster County. I was also sold 4 times and forced into some harsh physical labor and severe punishments. I had experienced sexual and physical abuse for years before I ran away, and that was just the beginning.
So, what was one of the hardest sacrifices you had to make in order to fight for what you believed in?
Well, I had 5 children before I was the age of 30, and I knew that if I was going to fight for what I believed in, I needed to leave them behind. So I took my youngest child, Sophia, and I ran away to the Van Wagners, a lovely abolitionist family who took me in.
So you said you had 5 children, correct?
Correct.
How were you allowed to have children?
Well, my master granted me permission to have children with this man that I fell in love with. And his name was Robert, and we were in love for a very long time until we were split up.
Was he a slave?
He was, yeah.
Oh, okay. And were you granted total or gradual emancipation since you were in the state of New York?
Well, because I was a slave before the year of 1799, I was granted total emancipation.
Okay. All right. So, another remarkable thing you did was becoming the first African-American woman to win a court case against a white man. What was the case about?
Well, it was actually about my son Peter, and he had been illegally sold to Alabama after gradual emancipation was granted in New York. But luckily, the judge knew what was right, and my baby boy came home, and we moved to New York City together.
All right. So, you have made many reforms to our society, and you are one of the most influential people for the fight for abolition and the fight for equality with women and men.
Correct.
Yes. So, how do you believe you affected American society, for better or for worse?
Well, I believe that I was the voice that any person could look up to, and my lack of education did not affect the power of my words. And I believe that my speeches had an impact on people's lives, encouraging them to speak up for what they thought was right.
I do believe that you are one of the most influential people I've met in my entire life. And you had a very long life. You lived to be 86 years old.
Yes, I'm very old.
You know, I want to say thank you for coming out and letting me interview you.
Anytime, sweet cheeks.